do that. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I see already the attendee number rising. That's good. We're here today, afternoon here in Amsterdam for me, with a few very knowledgeable speakers to talk more about quality estimation, but especially in relation to the large language models. I want to keep my introduction very short because we have a lot to talk about. Just want to let you know that if you have any questions for the speakers, then please type them in the chat box and we'll handle them at the end of the webinar. So I'll just introduce all the other faces here on the screen. With me, we have Konstantin Dransch, founder of CustomMT, James Lin, localization technical program manager at Uber, João Graça from Unbabel, CTO, my colleague Amir Kamran, solution architect at TAUS, and then the director of TAUS, Jaap van der Meer, is hosting this webinar today, kind of moderating the conversation. Without further ado, I think, Jaap, maybe you want to dive a little bit deeper into this topic.
Well, thank you, Annemai. But first of all, let me apologize on behalf of Christian Vederman, who was also going to be a speaker on this panel. Unfortunately, he's sick today, so he cannot join. We'll miss his special experience with Gemba, the large language model, his experience training large language models, doing quality evaluation, quality estimation. But I'm sure that the other speakers will be able to step in for him on that aspect as well. So before we introduce our panelists a little further, or ask them to introduce themselves a little further, what can you expect today in this webinar? Well, quality estimation is a hot topic in our industry these days. There's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of writing about it. And we can certainly understand why, of course, now with AI, there is a huge rise in content, increase in content, and also a rising kind of awareness that we need some tools to put more trust in all this content, whether it's created by engines or translated by engines. We need to find a way to assess the quality, the reliability, the accuracy of all that content without having humans going line by line for all this content. That's physically impossible these days. So that's the simple explanation, I think, why this is such a hot topic today. Now, this webinar is presented to you, announced to you as a furious debate between two camps. On the one side, people who say, oh, you don't need to do anything. You can just ask an LLM to check also the quality. So the LLM AI is generating all this content, translating all this content, and it's also grading its own content, its own work, so to say. That will work just fine. And the other camp would say, no. You have to control this. You have to train your own models. You definitely cannot trust LLMs to do a proper job on that. Now, I'm going to disappoint you. The truth is maybe somewhere in the middle, but none of our speakers will choose very clearly one side, or maybe they try just to make the debate today a little bit more exciting. We'll see. But before we get to the core question, this question, obviously, because we cannot expect all of the people on this webinar. By the way, I don't know if you already said that on the mic. We have about 600 people registered for this webinar, which is another testimony of the immense popularity of this topic, indeed. Before we dive into the core question, this debate question, we will guide you a little more into the subject of MTQE, quality estimation, quality prediction, whatever people call it. So my first question to the panelists here, to the speakers here today, is to I'll ask them to introduce themselves a little further, beyond sort of their name and their function and the company they work for. Can you please elaborate a little bit on what your relationship is with the topic of quality estimation? When did you first hear about this phenomenon, this technology? How did you get involved, and what do you do with it today? So let me start perhaps with Xiao. Do you want to go first and introduce yourself a little further, and then particularly focusing on the topic today here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot for having me. My name is João Graça, and I'm the co-founder and CTO of Unbabel. We've been one of the pioneers on QE, so we started working on QE 7 or 8 years ago. We participated on the first workshop organized by Lucia Specia. And for me, since the beginning, QE was the secret key, so we could see the rise of MT, but there was no way to know when MT was useful or not. And so since then, we've been always participating on the shard task, increasing QE. It's been a pleasure to see how QE has evolved from being not so good only for MT, to actually to the state that it is right now, which is good to evaluate human output, which is amazing. And I mean, we've been using QE in production to our customers for at least 6 years. First to completely skip some jobs, then to basically show editors which segments require more attention, to actually curate TMs, or to actually show the editors exactly where the errors are that need to be fixed. Yeah, that's me.
All right, thank you, Xiao. James, you want to go next?
Yes. Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is James Lin. I'm the manager for the technical program manager at Uber, specifically managing the comprehensive operation and research and development for machine translation and LLM programs at Uber. Our journey through this evolving landscape and the localization has been both challenging and rewarding, reflecting our commitment to global communication and inclusivity. At Uber, we recognize the critical role that effective communications play a connecting with our user across the globe. This understanding drive our relentless pursuit of excellence in translation quality, ensuring that our services are not just accessible, but also resonate at a personal level within our city across a diverse user base. And today's this topic that we're about to discuss is part of that innovation strategy and the technological advancements that we have adopted and enhanced our localization efforts. We have been using QE for more than a year now, and how we use it, of course, we can discuss that in today's panelists. But we believe that the QE is the next frontier on using similar how we use for transition memory to address the transition quality. And also we use the transition so that not only we can save costs, but also for scalability and addressing the turnaround times. Thank you.
Thanks, James. And I will zoom later in on the exact use cases and the benefits that we're after. So thanks for that further introduction. Konstantin, your turn.
Thank you. Well, I'm a newcomer to QE. That's not something I know in depth, unlike Joan and James and yourself. Yep. For the last 3 years, I've put aside my research hat, only sometimes I put it on, and focused on implementing AI in localization teams on both sides, vendor and buyer. And typically, we encounter a request or an interest in QE in 2 scenarios. One scenario is a human in the loop, where there is a post-editing program going on and people are interested. All right, we've invested in better machine translation. We've trained our engines, fine-tuned them, selected the best, whatever. Now, how do we get the ROI? So QE comes into play as one of the tools. And second option is, or we'd like to translate this enormous catalog of articles, product descriptions, whatever, but we're not sure that without a human review, absolutely, the quality will be all right. We need to kind of protect ourselves a little bit and shore up our risks. Is there anything in the market that can help us? And again, QE comes into play. Today, for the sake of the discussion, yep, I will take the position of a person who argues, why can't we do it all with OpenAI? Isn't it so easy that any localization team can build it? So
Okay, but it's
disclaimer
fake, huh? Yeah,
ahead of no, it's not so easy. But
yeah.
since nobody else is going to take this position, I'll serve the team by arguing for it.
You sacrifice yourself. Okay, thank you.
Let's do
That's
it.
great. Amir.
Yeah. So I'm actually working with TAUS for almost 7 years now, and one of the main things that I was working on is to basically make full use of the data that TAUS has. So we have a lot of data related to machine translation, customization, and translation, and large amount of translation memories. So one of the main things that was a big challenge for us is to clean that data to make sure that we have always high quality data that we can utilize for doing the customization of machine translation, for example. So we were trying a lot of different models to clean the data. We were writing custom rules as well. And then since these models become more common after the introduction of transformers, things become much different. So we started fine-tuning different models, and we started to experiment with different models, and that gave us nice results. And then we also noticed that there is a missing kind of service in the industry that people can actually utilize and use this thing that we are internally using and cleaning our data ourselves. So then we productize that and launch our own service of quality estimation last year, which really got good attention. And that's basically my connection with the quality estimation, that now we are offering this service and we are actively doing development and customization of this service for our clients as well. And we are really hopeful that this will be a successful product for TAUS. And already we are processing a lot of data for this purpose.
Great, thank you, Amir. And Zhao, you the name Lucia Spezia, you dropped the name. She was the first, I think, who started researching this topic, right? And did she call it quality estimation from the get-go, or were there other titles to refer to this new technology?
No, I think it was quality estimation.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
The goal has been switching, or has been increasing the scope. So before, you were just computing some sort of edit distance. So you're basically trying to understand what was the edit distance between the reference and the translation. And then you move from there to try to estimate the score of like how good is the sentence. So try to predict MQM. And now we're going to predict the spams, the type of error, the explanation of the error. You know, ideally, I think the ideal scenario is that you get the full MQM prediction with all the categories, all the severities. Well, you can get that nowadays. And you also get like an explanation of the error, and you also get the suggestion for the correction. That is kind of the where we're getting to. I think that's the goal. Moving this. But I think it's always been called quality estimation, and then different companies have added different flavors to call it something.
Yeah, of course, now they want to differentiate themselves for marketing reasons and what have you. But so the first time it was the term was coined was by Lucia Spezia. If anybody wants to Google that, and that was, you said 7 years ago, Zhao. What do you think?
More or less, but I'll search a paper and put it here.
Anyway, now I'm sure there are hundreds, if not thousands, of students studying this topic. Actually, interestingly, just today we had a new intern starting at TAUS who's fully dedicated to this topic and researching quality estimation. So it's a very broad topic now across the industry.
Yeah, but Zhao, question, right? I mean, you mentioned about quality estimation as QE. There's also another term for QE, it's called quality evaluation. You know, I mean, we have people here that may confuse. How do we differentiate the QE for quality estimation versus the QE for quality evaluation? How do you differentiate?
Thank you, James. Yeah, that's great that you asked that question, because a lot of people we hear are confused about it too. Were you volunteering, Zhao, to explain that? Or?
Yeah, I mean,
or do you want to address it yourself, James? Or
well, I'm asking Zhao. I mean, I can address this.
Yeah, Zhao, go ahead. Yeah.
From my perspective, and again, I I'm not arguing that quality explanation is the best name. I think evaluation is when you have a reference and you're basically trying to make a metric for MT. That was the origins of Comet. So for instance, at Unbabel, you used to have QE, like the fruit for quality estimation, and Comet for quality evaluation. And then we just merged both of them. But one is like you have a reference, you're doing evaluation. You don't have a reference, you're doing estimation. That's how we differentiate it.
Yeah. And same here at Uber, right? We actually use quality evaluation to understand the post-editing, time to edit for the machine transition to PE. And then later on, right, we actually realized that QE estimation is also important as part of the real-time transition, which we can discuss that later as part of this panel as well.
Yeah. And Konstantin, you have a good eye for what's happening in the market. Can you maybe share with us some other names? As we said, people are now embracing this and making it part of their offering. They want to perhaps differentiate from marketing reasons, and so we get many different references, names, and connotations. Can you give us an overview what you picked up?
Well, yeah, if we go back a little bit to the time when you collaborated on the DQF and QE metrics and the error annotation came around, people came up with all kinds of ideas. Translation Quality Index, TQI, Quality Intelligence, MTQE, MT Prediction, because it's a predictive model. So what's the phrases latest?
Quality performance.
Quality performance. There we go.
Quality performance score. Yeah.
QPS. Thank you for to spell in the comments. So quite a few names.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, indeed. So let's talk a little bit about the use cases for quality estimation for. We keep calling it quality estimation now, or maybe MTQE sometimes. Amir, what would you say? What are the main use cases from your perspective, from our perspective at TAUS?
Yeah. So what we have so far seen is the biggest use case, which is the most obvious one as well, is to reduce the cost of post-editing. And that's the natural one. So you have a score, and then you can filter based on that and decide whether a sentence is good enough to be published directly, or a human is needed to basically do some editing on that. And for this purpose, this is definitely a very useful tool. But then there are many other possibilities as well. So for example, if you are doing LQA, currently you do random sampling, but if there is a quality score available for each segment that is in your database, then you can do a better sampling. You can just do the sampling for the errors, and then you can better analyze the errors, and you can do much better in terms of retraining the machine transition model. So that's another use case of that. And now that we have a lot of new scenarios where large language models can be utilized, and we don't need humans to be involved in many of the tasks. But large language models are not easy to use and also expensive to use. So we can use the quality scores also to take the decision when to involve the large language models to do certain kind of things like automatic post-editing, or we can do source corrections as well. Or in other scenarios, wherever the large language models are needed, we can first filter the content based on the quality score, and then we can deploy a large language model. So this is another use case that we can think of.
Yeah. James, what do you want to talk a little bit about what the use cases are at Uber, how you are envisioning or how you're using currently the TAUS Estimate API, and how you envision how this could be expanded into more use cases?
Yeah. At Uber, right, we actually utilize the QE fundamentally for just evaluating machine translation, but then I can extend that with 2 use cases. I mean, we have on top of my head, I have like dozen use cases that we can use QE, but the 2 main use cases that we have, excuse me, first one is real-time translation. And at Uber, we have real-time translation for in-app translation. For example, rider communicating with driver in real-time communication using MT, courier speaking with merchants, or each delivery instructions such as please deliver my food at this address behind this apartment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And those kind of contact, from a syntactical and semantical point of view, it's very complex sentences, and especially in different culture, the address might translate differently. And that's why with QE, right, we're able to actually understand the actual quality of machine translation and then push that into our databases so that we can have visual form. Because without QE, we are blindsided. We have no idea how the transition looks like when, our motto and our basically what we focus on is a magical user experiences. We want to make sure that users can communicate to each other freely, natively, inclusivity. And therefore, by having a QE as part of this whole transition and understand the trend going forward, visualize the trend to see the quality of the transition on a weekly basis, we were able to understand that what does the quality looks like, and then focus on the actual outliers, and then we're able to actually fix the translation by having that holding 10%, 20% of the translation, and then having a human to evaluate and understanding that what is the accuracy of a QE. So we have multiple bosses on looking at QE score and ensure that QE score is working as the way it is, focus on the accuracy and also the fundamentally the translation quality. That's the first use cases, right? The second use cases that we have here is to service the best translation. Within Uber, we develop what we call a machine translation portal, and that we will serve our end user within our internal team. And we have a lot of engines and models out there that, if a user would like to translate their internal documentation to and from English to any languages, we serve them a lot of translation. And with QE score, right, we can actually service the best translation out of a lot of engine that we have. Yep. So that user doesn't have to really figure out which translation to use, especially that their time, their productivity is to pick the best translation. And QEs allow them to pick the translation, and we're able to use that data to serve our user as well, so that we can also improve the productivity, reduce the cost. That's something that we can definitely address that later in this call, but also for scalability, that we can actually use it as a data to continue to improve our translation as well.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, James. So Amir mentioned, most of the customers we're talking to are using quality estimation to reduce the cost of post editing or increase the efficiency. You're not doing that yet.
So right now, our focus on touchless translation. So by the end of the year, our aggressive goal is 90% touchless, meaning that everything that we're able to really shift from a human in the loop to touchless. And part of that equation is having QE, a very comprehensive QE, to really understand that what is the translation quality for MT, and also soon LLM as one of the complement to our translation pipeline. And to address that, we have a very comprehensive goal to go through that our ecosystem and then using QE as part of the translation process. But we are towards that direction where do we need PE or can we focus on APE or automatic post editing? That's something that we will continue to discuss, because we still want human as part of the evaluation process as a reference. For example, marketing, legal, those are very sensitive topics and contents. We do require human in the loop, but do we need two-step process or just one step, right? So let's step, cost saving, faster turnaround time, productivity increase, faster launches, but we will make sure that quality is always number one as our priority, and QE is part of the equation as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Joe, when you started implementing this at Unbabel, it was mainly for the post-editing savings, right? Or has it evolved? Are there other use cases that you're focusing on now too?
There are. I think everywhere that you want to use the understanding of quality of a translation, QE can be a proxy. I think the use case has been increasing with the quality of QE. So in the first versions of QE until like 2 years ago, it was mostly for analyzed machine translation. So you could use it to understand, do you need a post editor or not? Or you could basically compare different MT engines. Like we have a demo online that you can go there, put some text, and there's all the third-party engines you can compare against. And this is good if you have like an MT engine marketplace, or if you want to test comparators for your data. Now, the problem of QE back then is it was not fit for purpose to analyze human output, because human output is more random. So With XComment from last year, it's actually good to analyze human comment, and that opens a different range of use cases. So you can curate TMs, you can actually evaluate freelancers, you can look at the output of pipelines that have humans, which are much more important. You can curate data to train machine translation engines, which is super important. Now, the next step is once you can now predict the spams and the severity and the error type, now it becomes useful. Well, it becomes more useful to put on the CAT tool, because instead of just showing, I think this segment is not good, you can actually tell the translator, I think there's an error there. And he can go very focused fixing. And I think that's going to change completely the way that we do post edition. So for big documents, you can actually focus on the segments that have errors and not on the linear part. And also the feedback from translators can allow you to improve the model. So I think that's going to be a game changer. And if you can provide a potential solution and explanation, it will make better. So I think that's that's really cool, like what the QE can do right now. I think one thing that we haven't seen yet, and I don't understand why, but I think it's going to be something that's going to change really quick, is actually start using QE on the commercial side. Because we're still talking about TM discounts. TMs are a proxy for quality. It's like, I believe that if this was added before, I believe that this is going to have quality, and hence I don't want to pay it again. And we know the problems with TMs, they get outdated, they lack context. So I'm a firm believer that TMs will soon be dead, and you're going to be doing QE discounts. So that's what we're doing right now. We have QE discounts. I think that's the way to go forward. Like if you have quality, you pay less, period. That's kind of like, accounting for AI on the translation industry.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. There are discussions happening on LinkedIn. I've seen the end of TMs, but now you're raising this point that quality estimation is actually a catalyst in this evolution. It's accelerating the death of TM, maybe. That's an interesting perspective. Joe, I don't know if you want to say that, but we're talking about the initial target of using quality estimation to reduce the cost of post-editing. Do you have any numbers on that? How it helped you to sort of what percentage of cost you were able to save?
I don't know the exact number because it's been changing over time, and it's very dependent on the content and on the quality of MT, which kind of depends what's the customer, what's the volume. But for instance, like it's been helpful to see the improvements of MT. So we were for some years very focused on customer service, and we see every single email needs a human, so that doesn't say garbage, to like almost less emails need a human, or at least or they need less humans. Involving is still not perfect, but I don't have a specific number. It's very dependent on like customer language per use case.
Yeah. That's true, because you can see, anyone who wants to see some use cases can come to our website. We have some testimonials, but indeed, as Joao was saying, it ranges from 25% savings, and one use case is up to 60% savings. So it is a wide range indeed. Savings on post-editing costs, that is. Konstantin, any use case missed by the previous speakers? Did you pick up on any?
Well,
anything else?
the old school localization teams thinking in the existing paradigm often come up with a language quality portal, which is a kind of a dashboard where they can monitor the human translation quality at scale and machine translation quality at scale, right? So a way to have one control panel for all language quality. Maybe I'm saying old school, but actually all teams need it.
Yeah. All right. Good. That was on the use cases, and while we have you here on full screen, Konstantin, we move to the core topic here of our webinar, and you can now defend the LLMs and say why we can simply trust LLMs to do a fantastic, perfect job on quality estimation. Is that true?
Well, for the sake of the argument.
You don't have to say that every time. We don't believe you anymore.
All right, so I'm undermining my own credibility in this respect. Well, if we look at a quality estimation built by the greats like Jean, here, Jean, wasn't it Roberta that you built it on? It was also a transformer model, but from some earlier generations.
Yes, so QE is also large language models, just not necessarily
it's
generative.
also a large language model, just depends on how large.
Yeah.
And when you started, the models were not as big and not as performant as GPT, you name it, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And so you used a lot of finesse, research, advanced teams, really strong expertise there to make it work. However, since then, the general availability of really performant models has skyrocketed. And a good model today, such as GPT-4 or Claude, is much more performant than the older school models that the first generations of QE had been built on. So it requires much less finesse and fewer touches to make it work, to make it performant. If we look at the foundational paper from Kristen Federman, who is absent today, on Gemba, it uses a very simple prompt. Do you think I can share my screen and look at the prompt that
I think so. You can try, yeah.
I can try, right? So when GPT 3.5 came around, he just used a very simple prompt one, score the translation from 0 to 100, right? Nothing fancy, right? So, and it worked. He proved with Tom Kochmi in a paper that it produces useful results.
Yeah.
And he did it on GPT 3.5. Now take GPT-4, it's much more performant. Now there's Gemini Ultra, there's Claude 3.0. These are much more performant. And the techniques in prompting have improved a lot, right? So you can do not a single prompt now, but what you call a chain of thought prompt, which is you split instructions into separate prompts and you run like, is there a translation error? How big is this error? Explain this error to me. There is definitely an error now. What type of error it is? You split those instructions and the accuracy goes much further. So with the newer models and the newer tools, a localization team with just Python scripting can now achieve useful results. I don't want to say parallel because nobody ever benchmarked all the QE tools out there. Once they can, Joan has benchmarked. So Joan, speak next and give us the information.
Shall get its turn. Yeah.
So quick roundup, the ability today of a simple Python scripter with the latest model available makes them potentially more powerful than some of the best scientists working on QE 8 years ago.
All right, that's your point of view. Thank you.
That's what I'm arguing today.
Yeah, you're challenging the others there. Well, we do get a lot of, we have a lot of conversations, obviously, at TAUS with customers and potential customers for quality estimation. And sometimes they say, oh, you know, because it costs money, of course, to get a proper setup quality estimation service from a provider like TAUS through an API, through a nice pipeline, you know, customized models and what have you. So quite often, sometimes we're getting this response like, well, I don't know, maybe we'll just use an LLM to do this. Let me, before we get to Xiao and James, also perhaps ask Amir what your take on this is. You know, is it fully reliable? Is it indeed cheap as people might think it is? What's your take on this?
Yeah, so as already mentioned that, so the concept of large language model, that's kind of getting blurred now. So the previous generation models at that time, they were the large models. And now, because we are just adding more parameters and we're adding more data, things are becoming different. And also because of the ChatGPT, the generation style models are kind of becoming synonymous to large language models. But there are other type of models as well, which are just encoder models. And they are more suited to these kind of problems where you need to do classifications and not text generation, for example. So when you're using a GPT style model or ChatGPT, for example, you will ask a question and it will give you an answer. So how reliable that answer, that's the main question. So can you trust that reply or not? Because it is a generative model, so it can generate something. The language will be very eloquent. It might give you some reasons as well. But when you ask the same question 3 times, it might give you 3 different answers. So if you are at first attempt, it will say the quality of translation is 95. Maybe next time it will say 90, and it will give you the same reason for both scores. So now can you take that score and implement a workflow on that? That's the big challenge. You can make that reliable by keep improving your prompt. So you can maybe add the whole documentation of MQM and then ask the same question again. Then it might give you slightly better, more reliable, more consistent answers. But then the whole prompt will be more costly than the actual sentence. So you are actually paying for the prompt every time you are actually asking a question, and that is too expensive actually. If you are writing pages of prompt, then to get just one quality score, then that whole prompt is much more expensive than what you can achieve with a very simple model dedicated just for quality estimation. So the most like the correct way of doing things is to actually take a large language models and then customize that for a particular downstream task, which is quality estimation, and then it will be much more reliable and more efficient. But then doing these kind of customizations and fine tunings, not everyone can do that. It's very complicated. And then to run large language models, you need infrastructure. So then there is also privacy concerns. Can you just send your data to ChatGPT? Not everyone is interested in that. So they need custom models that can be hosted in an environment which they can trust, or in their premise. So you need easier customizable solutions that are small enough and scalable enough to actually support the kind of tasks that we are trying to solve. So large language models are very good for many tasks, and I think in the future we will be doing a hybrid approach. As I previously mentioned, that you can just generate a score that can give you a way to run different dynamic workflows, and then large language models will come later in the workflow where you have to, for example, rewrite something, or you have to ask the language model, so this is my quality prediction, and based on that do something with the translation, and there it shines more.
Yeah, thank you, Amir. So we have issues with cost and consistency, or say reliability. What's your experience so far, James? Do you have a sort of a strong position like LLMs or no control environment? Now you're using a kind of more controlled, customized environment, of course, together with TAUS. But what is your view on the LLMs? Because that's part of your scope, part of your focus, right, at Uber.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, LLM is every company's, every industry is moving towards that direction. So we cannot really escape from the reality, right? But I believe, and especially when I say the team that I'm working with, and then the organization with the Uber AI team also we work with right now, we believe that LLM can do a good job if you provide enough instruction and reference materials. Of course, right, there are a few techniques such as few shots, RAG, like retrieval augmented generation, also Constantine mentioned chain of thoughts as well. But then before we even can trust how good is LLM to do a good job, as Constantine mentioned, right, there's like a benchmark, a baseline, some sort of foundational evaluation tool and processes that we have to ensure that the right output and avoid hallucination or inaccurate result. And at Uber, right, for us to look at and evaluate those kind of technical inaccuracy, we do have to address and look at the benchmark. And there are a few key benchmark or a few key processes. I can mention that in this webinar. But the first one, of course, is data sets, right? We have to make sure that the data set is diverse, and we have to make sure that the data set is representative on what you're doing as a domain level. You have to be carefully curated, have that avoid biases, and then using the data set to evaluate your large language model, either is summarization, or in this case, translation quality output, right, or translation in general. The best data set that we usually use are style guides, TM, and TM has to be really clean. If you have some sort of tool to clean your TM, glossary, and other internal reference, and so on. This should cover various domains that you want to have. And for Uber, right, it could be like marketing, for CRM, SEO, product for driver, rider, couriers. And they also focus on demographic groups, such as different language set, for non-English to English, or to English or to non-English, and make sure that it's a fairness for that. The second thing, of course, is fine-tuning and pick the model that you want to fine-tune, right? There are hundreds of base models out there, from Hugging Faces to closed, such as OpenAI or Microsoft, and also for Google as well. There are models that you can download and then evaluate to select the best, the LLM that you want to have. But then once you pick the right one for selection, you have to fine-tune it. And there are many techniques to fine-tuning, domain-specific training, parameter tuning, by parameter, right? We use temperature, different temperature and top K, and also other practical that most people have used, such as transfer tuning or few shot tuning, that you want to few shot reinforcement at the prompt levels to have a better output based on the few shot reinforcement learning. Of course, our prompt engineering, that's also one of the ways that we are focusing on, because I always think that a good linguistic are key to prompt engineering. Understanding that the nuances of languages and how it is used in a different context is crucial to craft a effective prompts. Because a good prompt, have a good result, and that's where the prompt is very, very important. That I'm hoping that all of us agree that. The last thing, of course, evaluation. We definitely need to have a very comprehensive evaluation matrix, like complexity, Rouge, Gamba, as somebody our team mentioned, MQN, Minerore, and other A/B testing, the human evaluation, are part of the assessment to evaluate the output of the performance and the large language models, because the data sets will help us to understand what is the quality of a translation. We cannot rely on one data set, because it does not work like that. Based on our experiences within a team that we have been communicating, have been showing data and others, we need multiple data sets at a per language level, per models. And then if you imagine that we have dozens of and especially Uber translate up to 58 languages or more, you can imagine that we need multiple models, multiple data sets, evaluation and numbers to really come up with an ideal benchmark for every languages, every prompts, and different model to understand the quality before we can actually fully roll out this particular transition pipeline with large language model. And QE also part of that equation as well, right? So let's not really forget about that, because QE also really look at the pre-reference material, where we can actually look at what is the QE after the LLM output. We can train LLM using QE plus MQN to look at the error category, error type, and topology, to ensure that we have the right output and have the human to evaluate that. So a lot of things that we're working on right now at Uber are still very fundamentally important, but I think that is the right direction towards that as well.
Yeah. So definitely more LLM appearance in the future on your roadmap. Yeah, that's clear.
It's not going away.
So finally then, Zhao, let's hear your view on that, and maybe you can take us also a little bit into the future, your view of how LLMs increasingly play a role also in quality estimation.
Yeah, so first, I agree with Konstantin. I think the instruction-based large language models like ChatGPT and everything else kind of put everyone be able to build really good AI models and not need a team for 8 years, which is, it is what it is. I think if you go to the models that can be compared, like open source and that participate on WMT, like Comet from Unbabel, still one to Gamba, which is GPT-4 from Microsoft and everyone else. And it is a large language model trained on a discriminative basis. So right now, the state of the art is not ChatGPT or instruction-based, it's a discriminative model. These models are also much faster to decode. Having said that, you can do stuff with LLMs, like for instance, ask to explain the errors or propose suggestions that you cannot do easily with these discriminative models. On the other hand, I do believe that in 1 year, all the models are going to be based out of LLMs. I think that GPT-4 is very good, but I saw your post, Konstantin, but right now, no one can use it on production. It's very expensive and very slow. So good luck on trying to use GPT-4 for doing quality assessment. Having said that, one thing I noticed is like, if you look at our LLM from Unbabel, like the second version will have a really good QE. And that's because we basically instruct it to do quality estimation. And then it can learn how to do much better than GPT-4 on quality estimation. That's an LLM. And then you can actually do much more interesting things. You can pass context that was very hard to do with previous models. You can pass customization of the customers. You can pass terminology, because quality estimation is supposed to assess linguistic knowledge. And by the definition, when you pass customizations of a customer, like a glossary and so on, you're deviating from what's the normal linguistic thing. That's why it's customized. And you can't expect to have an LLM per customer. Like, it's not feasible to deploy right now, but you can actually prompt and do RAG on top of an LLM to solve for that. So yes, right now they're not state of the art. I don't think there's a good solution to get quality and speed yet. It's being developed. I would be very surprised if next year the state of the art on quality estimation, and by the way, machine translation as well, I think it's already there, is not an LLM. And I think it's much more versatile. So that's the direction to go. And you'll see models coming out that will start being used for that right now. For us, right now, internally, the solution that we offer is a combination. We use a discriminative to detect and a generative to add information. So if you use the API, you get both. But I see the trend to be just everything moving to the LLM front.
Okay, so increasing role for LLMs in the future. Well, before we go to the questions, just to dwell a little longer on this topic and see if there are additional thoughts on that, because what we see is that you build a sort of a bridge, kind of the pipe, the Estimate API, for instance, starts to cover more features, more functions, and some of them do really tap into LLMs, and you for instance, can do things like auto-fixing source content, or doing QE on the source content, and fix errors in the source content, or automate post-editing. So it becomes a much more comprehensive feature or service, if you like. What is your take on that, Amir? Is there kind of an increasing role for quality estimation in a broader setting, as a richer set of features that companies can rely on?
Yeah, so the whole pipeline of this model training and fine-tuning, and then coming up with this classifier that can actually predict the quality, this same can be applied on many different kind of other things as well. So if you are training a classifier for doing quality estimation, that's a number, but you can also do, for example, checking profanity of the sentence, and then that could become another score, and that could tell you some information about the sentence as well. And sometimes the translation is not really checking the style of the sentence or grammar of the sentence, because the source, the translation is true to the source, and if source has some problems, translation should copy that. But then you can add, for example, another check whether the grammar is correct or not, or whether the style is formal or informal. Add all these kind of checks, and keep adding these features into your result. So one score will just suggest whether the quality is right or not, but then you can add on top of that different flags or different numbers, and then based on that you can drive a lot of different workflows, and again use LLMs to act on that. So provide this information to LLM, and then LLM can take some further actions to maybe rewrite the sentence, do the post editing themselves, and maybe suggest some other workflows.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Let me ask just a very the last question, and I'm asking you to give each of you just a quick answer to that question. Zhao already brought this up. The end of TM maybe is accelerated by the rise of quality estimation. So my question is, in a year from now, will everybody be using, all the stakeholders in our industry, LSPs, buyers, maybe even translators, will they all be using some form of quality estimation, and in a diminishing way using TMs? What's your take on that, Konstantin? Short answer.
We already saw the jump from 75% fuzzy match to 85%, now to 90%. Many companies now just saying 100% match is TM, everything below that is machine translation. I don't think TM is going away. Its demise has been predicted repeatedly for years and years, and it's still there. But definitely its role will be smaller, and it will be called cage, translation cage, and not translation memory.
And quality estimation will become a general feature for everybody.
It's becoming more widespread in translation tools. So it's likely that somewhere in the future, maybe not a year from now, it will be an embedded technology, not something to carefully on board like today. Look at James. James is one of the most competent people on the buy side in the world in localization, and he chose to onboard quality estimation. So he's very far ahead of the curve.
Right. You're
As
an
the
early.
barrier goes down, more people will come in.
Yeah. James, over to you. What is your prediction?
Well, I will say, TM will be here because number one, it's easy to deploy. Number two, TM does help the translation, the process, the scalability. It's faster, deployment is easier. It's already embedded to any platform that we can ever think of. So TM, I don't think it'll go away. It just become a niche, become a part of the standard purchasing by clients or whoever that want to have a TMS. TM will be part of that equation. QE will be part of the embedded, as Constantine mentioned, will not be part of the regular workflow because it might be conflict of interest between TM and QE. But what we see right now is QE also helps for anything that is below certain TM threshold as a pattern matching. QE will be there to support that additional reference material, that additional score for the translator to look at the data, look at the segment, and able to evaluate how do we improve the transition. So I would think that the TM and QE will be complement each other, not be separated.
Yeah. So João, back to you. Constantine and James do not fully agree with you that TM will be dead soon. Do you stand by your point of view? And what is QE going to be? Is that going to be everywhere? Everybody will be using that?
Yes, I think QE will be everywhere. It will be able to serve more places. I don't think TMs will be dead in the sense it's curated data, so it will still be useful in a lot of places. What I mean is going to be subsumed. So instead of people talking about how many TM discounts do I have, you're going to talk about QE discounts. Because it's all TMs is just about quality. It's a proxy for quality, and you have a better proxy now that is more complete. TM does not take in consideration the quality of MT, for instance. So that's my belief. We can be here to each other next year and see who's right or wrong, or in 2 years.
TM plus QE, but it's two combined.
Amir, you're the last to answer that question.
Yeah, I think the workflow is slightly changing. So previously you were building TMs, and then the idea was that there is a human in the loop, and then the human will correct something, and then that goes back to the TM. And then there was separation between TM and MT. But now you can actually put your TM in the MT, and then the MT always actually giving you the answer from TM first, and then generating a sentence if it's not there. So that the use of TM is actually not useful anymore. So if you are just using MT everywhere, then you just need a check whether the quality is right or not. And then that because there is no human involved, now you don't know when to actually add a sentence back to the translation memory. So the question whether you will fully rely on that, the score that is coming out of quality estimation, and then you will say, okay, now I can put that back into TM. If that question is not there, then that means TMs will not grow further.
Yeah.
Can we have a fuzzy match? Anything that is low, below certain threshold, use MT rather than an entire segment. MT it, but then half the segment, for example, you have one sentences, half a segment is 100% matches, and half the segment is below 50%. That 50%, couldn't you use MT to translate to improve the quality, and then use QE as part of that evaluation, so that we don't have to translate the entire segment with MT, but just have a segment in MT, and then TM to complement each other, right? So that we have TM fuzzy matches plus MT, and then generate the QE score. I think that's something nice to have.
All right, thanks. That's a good tip. I'd like to take the last, keep the last 5 minutes for some questions, burning questions from the audience. Annemai, can you
Well,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
still here.
there's some questions in the Q&A box, some questions in the chat, but I think that, well, we can easily have another full webinar on just one of these questions, which is, you know, the definition of quality. Of course, you know, what actually is quality when we refer to quality estimation? Well, of course, I think a very short answer is really what you train the engine with or the model with defines the quality. So there's all kinds of different quality levels and expectations, and that's how you train the model. But that's just me from a business perspective giving the answer. I don't know if there's anyone here who can share a more technical, maybe more satisfying answer on this very open question. What are some metrics that maybe that we can maintain for defining the quality of LLM output, of QE output? Or is that just
I
too
can try
much?
to take that. I mean, for us, it's correlation with MQM. I think it's MQM still has some ambiguities, but I think it's the best tool we have to reduce the ambiguity. And then you measure correlation. Like a perfect QE would mimic MQM, and we expect to be correct. That's our point of view.
That was the previous kind of phase in our evolution, right? We came up with the industry standard metrics, MQM, DQF, MQM. So that's the best reference for defining quality. I agree with that.
And
But
also,
it's sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so also what we have noticed is that quality is a perception also of the client. So what kind of purpose they're using the MT for. So sometimes if the meaning is preserved, but the lexical choices are not right, still for some clients this is okay quality, and then your model has to understand that the perception of quality is slightly low, so they have to score accordingly. But in some cases, you need to be very sure that everything is right, is stylistic, and every word is in its right place. Then the quality is much higher, and then your model needs to be fine-tuned according to that. So it's a perception for me.
Yeah, that's also true. Annemai, do you have a more sort of concrete or factual question that is more easy to answer?
I was muted, sorry. I think there are quite a few questions about, you know, where LLM fits into the workflow. Then you use maybe LLM in combination with the MT and then use LLM to evaluate. Well, there's a lot of questions about that that I think also is not an easy answer, because I think we don't even know the use cases out there for LLMs at the moment. Probably every week or every month is something new that we discover that, oh, this is another thing we can do with LLM. So yeah, I don't see any very concrete questions that we can answer in these last 2 minutes, unless somebody writes it in the chat box now. So I just want to maybe say that quality estimation is a hot topic right now, and we'll be having a lot more talks, webinars, posts, and information about this in the coming months, probably throughout the year. Actually, at TAUS, we've done some work over the past months to improve our metrics, our scorings, which also improves the accuracy of the quality scores that's being put out by our Estimate API. So we'll be having another webinar at the end of this month, talking more about this new metric available in the Estimate API. Yeah, and I think that also I'd just like to really thank all the speakers here today for giving their insights, their predictions, sharing that all with us. Yeah, I don't know, Jaap, if you have any other closing.
No, I want to join you in thanking Joe, James, Konstantin, Amir for sharing your knowledge and your points of view. I'm sure this has been very helpful for our big audience, and also just to mention that the recording will be made available, and we hope to see you all back for the next webinar. I think it's on the 28th of March, right? And yeah, look forward to continue to discuss all these new technologies and connections with the world of AI. Fascinating year ahead of us. So stay tuned, and thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and I'll iterate on what Ron said. If you're trying it with GPT-4, then good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck, man. Thank you. Bye,
Thanks,
Constance. Bye,
Lord.
guys.
Good luck, everybody. Bye. Bye.